If you haven't already, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and also don't forget to click on the notification bell so you'll be up to date on all videos released from the Everything Network. According to federal prosecutors, Jr. was inducted into the Gambino crime family on Christmas Eve 1988. According to fellow mobster Michael DeLeonardo, who was initiated the same night, Sammy Gravano held the ceremony to keep Gotti from being accused of nepotism. Gotti Jr. was named a captain in 1990 and is believed to be the youngest one in the Gambino crime family's history. In April of '92, his father, John Gotti Sr., received a life sentence for racketeering and other related offenses. His father asserted his prerogative to retain his title as boss until his death or retirement, with his brother Peter and his son Gotti Jr. relaying orders on his behalf. Remembering how his father had been brought down by FBI bugs, Gotti adopted a more secretive way of doing business. He discussed mob business mainly through walk talks or conversations held while walking alongside trusted captains. He also tried to pose as a legitimate businessman. However, several of his button men didn't think much of him, thinking he was incompetent. He was not nearly as good a negotiator as his father had been, and the Gambinos lost out on several disputes with the other families. The Genovese family was so unimpressed with Gotti Jr. that it refused to deal with him at all. In 1995, Charles Carneglia and John Alite were involved in a major conspiracy to murder Gotti. In a 1997 search of the basement of a property owned by Gotti, the FBI found a typed list of the names of the made members of his organization, as well as $348,700 in cash, a list of the guests who attended his wedding, along with the dollar amount of their wedding gifts, totaling more than $350,000, along with 2 handguns. Also found was a list of several men who were inducted into other families from '91 and 1992. A long-standing rule in the New York Mafia calls for prospective members to be vetted by the other families before being inducted. However, normally these lists are destroyed almost as soon as the inductions take place. The discovery enraged Gotti Sr., as well as the other bosses from the other families, since it put dozens of other mobsters at risk of government scrutiny. By the late 90s, when he was indicted on racketeering charges under the RICO Act, Gotti Jr. was believed to be the acting boss of the Gambino crime family. Many of the charges related to attempts to extort money from the owners and employees of Scores, an upscale strip club in Manhattan. According to the indictment, the Gambinos had forced the owners of Scores to pay $1 million over a 6-year period in order to stay in business, with Gotti's share of the money totaling $100,000. In addition to the list seized in the 1997 raid, prosecutors obtained transcripts of prison conversations in which Jr. received advice from his father on how to run the family. On April 5, 1999, faced with overwhelming evidence, Gotti Jr. pleaded guilty to 4 acts of racketeering, including bribery, extortion, and the threat of violence, against his father's advice. His lawyer said he decided to accept a plea bargain because he believed that he would be subjected to repeated prosecutions in multiple jurisdictions if he did not. On September 4, 1999, he was sentenced to 6 years and 5 months in prison and fined $1 million. Federal prosecutors said his uncle, Peter Gotti, became head of the Gambino organization after Jr. was sent to prison, and he is believed to have formally succeeded his brother shortly before his father's death in June 2002. Gotti Jr.'s indictment had brought stress on his parents' marriage. His mother, up to that point, unaware of her son's involvement in the mafia, blamed her husband for ruining her son's life and threatened to leave him unless he allowed Gotti Jr. to leave the mob. In 2004, months before he was released from prison, Gotti was charged in an 11-count racketeering indictment, which included an alleged plot to kidnap Curtis Lewa, founder of the Guardian Angels, as well as securities fraud, extortion and loan sharking. A radio talk show host for WABC, Lewa had allegedly angered the family by denouncing the elder Gotti as public enemy number 1 on his show. During the trial, 2 former associates, Michael DeLeonardo and Joseph D'Angelo, testified against Gotti. Through his attorney Jeffrey Lichtman, Gotti admitted that he had been involved in the Gambino crime family in the 1990s and had even been slated to lead the organization after his father was sent to jail in 1992, but claimed he had left criminal life behind after his conviction in 1993. 3 juries eventually deadlocked on the charges, the last in 2006, and federal prosecutors decided not to pursue a 4th trial. In August 2008, Gotti was arrested and indicted on racketeering and murder conspiracy charges, brought in Florida. The charges stemmed from an alleged drug trafficking ring Gotti operated, along with former associate turned government witness, John Alite. This also included the murders of George Grasso in 1988, Louis DeBono in 1990, and Bruce John Gotterup in 1991. Prosecutors charged that the ring distributed at least 5 kilograms of cocaine in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Gotti's trial was later moved to New York, where he pleaded not guilty and began in September 2009. In January 2008, Alight pleaded guilty to 2 murders, 4 murder conspiracies, at least 8 shootings, and 2 attempted shootings, as well as armed home invasions and armed robberies in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania and Florida, stemming from his alleged involvement in a Gambino crew in Tampa, Florida. Alight agreed to testify in the trial of Gambino family enforcer Charles Carneglia, who was found guilty of 4 murders and is now serving a life sentence. He then served as a key prosecution witness against Gotti. During the trial, Gotti allegedly threatened Alight by mouthing the words, "I'll kill you," and engaged in a shouting match with his former associate. After the incident, Victoria Gotti told the New York Daily News that Alight was a pathological liar and a rat who's been caught in a proverbial trap, caught in his own lies. Alight testified that Gotti was responsible for at least 8 murders, among other crimes. On December 1, 2009, the 12 jurors announced that they had failed to reach a unanimous verdict on all the charges, and the judge declared a mistrial. After the trial, jurors said that they did not find witnesses, particularly Alight, to be credible. One of the jurors said, "They should stop this now, it's ridiculous," while another said, "It's abusive. It's almost become a mockery." Gotti was released on December 1, 2009. After Gotti's 4th mistrial, federal prosecutors had indicated that they would not seek another trial against Gotti. In January 2010, the government decided not to pursue further charges against him either. Jr. maintains that he has since left the Gambino crime family, and in a 2015 interview with the New York Daily News, he denied claims that he was an informant, claiming that he did give the FBI information, but that it was unrelated information, and that no indictments resulted from the information he gave agents. John Jackie D'Amico is a New York mobster and has been the street boss of the Gambino crime family since 2005. In the Gambino family, it is said that the street boss may be in fact the official boss of the family. His parents were born in the region of Italy and moved to New York some time later. He graduated from New Utrecht High School in Brooklyn. He stayed on the Upper East Side of Manhattan in the high-rise apartments. Former FBI Special Agent Bruce Muo said that D'Amico was always broke and constantly in debt. John Gotti loved him because Jackie was a fellow gambler who placed all his bets for him. He is an old friend of Irving Hershkowitz, the founder and president of the non-alcoholic beverage corporation, Big Geyser Incorporated. He worked in their Queens warehouse and maintained the job until he was brought to trial and convicted of extortion. He started as a delivery truck driver with a base salary of $23,000. He later switched to working as a salesman on commission. His salary was raised to $71,000 a year. At the same warehouse where D'Amico had an office, he was a co-worker of Lucchese crime family captain Matthew Madonna, who is also listed on the company payroll as well. An assistant U.S. attorney suspected that while appearing on the payroll, D'Amico was given a no-show job, allowing him to collect health benefits from the company, a Jaguar that was leased by the company, and to claim lawful employment. Hershkowitz stated to reporter Tom Robbins that he had known D'Amico for 30 years and considered him a longtime friend. Hershkowitz and D'Amico also attended New Utrecht High School together. Sammy Gravano also attended this school before dropping out. By the late 1960s, D'Amico was a bookmaker and soldier in the Gambino family, then ruled by boss Carlo Gambino. In the 1970s, he became an associate of Queens-based Captain John Gotti. By 1976, D'Amico began operating in loan sharking, illegal gambling, extortion and labor racketeering activities in Brooklyn, Queens and in the Bronx. After Carlo Gambino died, his brother-in-law Paul Castellano became the new boss of the family. During the late 1970s, D'Amico was promoted to captain in the Brooklyn faction. With income from loan sharking, extortion, and illegal gambling operations, he gained much respect as a respectable earner within the Gambino family. On December 16, 1985, Castellano and his underboss Thomas Bilotti were gunned down outside the Spark Steakhouse in Manhattan. John Gotti, who had orchestrated their assassination, now became the Gambino boss. D'Amico became one of Gotti's closest associates moving forward. In 1992, Gotti was convicted of racketeering and murder charges and was sentenced to life in prison. When Gotti went to prison, he created a ruling panel to supervise the family. This panel included D'Amico, Gotti's son, Gotti Jr. as acting boss, John's brother Peter Gotti, and Captain Joseph Arcuri. Other accounts state that Nicholas Carrazzo, not Arcuri, was on the ruling panel. From 1994 on, D'Amico ran an illegal gambling house in Brooklyn. He is also a reputed gambler himself and lived in a modest house in New Jersey with his wife Rosalie. When a reporter knocked on her door in 2006 she said, "You're not going to get any information from me, he comes and goes. That's the way it's been for the past 40 years. In 1998, D'Amico was charged with racketeering and loan sharking. He pleading guilty to a single count of operating an illegal gambling operation in Connecticut whose profits went to Gotti Jr. On July 8, 1999, he was sentenced to 20 months in prison. With D'Amico in prison, control of the family passed to Nicholas Carrazzo and Leonard DiMaria. He was released from prison in September 2001. According to federal authorities, D'Amico became the Gambino acting boss in 2003. However, with the 2006 release of Nicholas Carrazzo, a new report stated that both he and Carrazzo were running the family, with Arnold Scudieri as underboss and Joseph Carrazzo as consigliere. D'Amico was arrested along with more than 60 affiliates of the Gambino family on February 7, 2008, after Operation Old Bridge picked up an informant named Joseph Valero. The operation went on to terminate the drug trafficking between the Gambinos and their drug connections in Sicily. While D'Amico was placed at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, Nicholas Carrazzo became a fugitive. On March 14, 2008, D'Amico was released on bail. Following the indictments from Operation Old Bridge, he was still on trial regarding multiple counts of racketeering charges. In May 2008, he pleaded guilty to extorting a cement company out of $100,000 and was sentenced on August 18, 2008 to 2 years in prison at the MCC, New York City. In February 2009, while still in prison, he was charged with arranging the 1989 Weiss murder and is set to go on trial after his release. He had been scheduled for release from prison on November 3, 2009. However, in February 2010, he was charged with arranging the Weiss murder and was kept in prison during his trial. On August 5, 2010, he pleaded guilty to conspiring to assault Frederick Weiss with a dangerous weapon so as to prevent Weiss from cooperating against the Gambino family as a potential witness. The district attorney agreed to a lenient plea agreement because the case against him was weak. D'Amico was incarcerated at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, New York City, and was released on June 15, 2012. Frank Colli was born in New York City in 1965. Both his parents were natives of Palermo, Sicily. His father ran a household goods store in Palermo and a video store in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. He had a clean police record in the United States, even though he was mentioned in the Pizza Connection investigation when police discovered that he was a partner of Domenico Adamita, allied to Sicilian mafia boss Gaetano Badalamenti. Frank Colli was a nephew of Sicilian mobster John Gambino, Joseph Gambino and Rosario Gambino, and had close ties to the once powerful Sicilian mafia family led by Salvador Inzerillo. Frank Colli was also a great-nephew of Bonanno crime family mobsters Giovanni Bonventre and Vito Bonventre. He was also related to Gambino boss Paul Castellano. As a little boy, he bonded with Gambino mobster John D'Amico, a lieutenant of Gambino boss John Gotti, who operated a crew on 18th Avenue in Brooklyn. As Colli entered adolescence, he began to work for D'Amico and had reputation as a top earner. In January 1997, the FBI reported to Italian authorities that Colli had been combined into the Gambino family. In 2005 he was promoted to acting capo when D'Amico became acting boss. Frank Colli ran several import-export companies in Brooklyn, including Circus Fruits Wholesale in Fort Hamilton, Brooklyn, recycling of millions of dollars through food distribution. Contrary to mobster stereotypes, he is not known to resort to violence and is known to be a negotiator when involved in mafia disputes. Colli also maintained ties with the Sicilian mafia. He married Rosaria Inzerillo, a sister of Pietro Inzerillo and a relative of Gambino associate Frank Inzerillo, a member of the Palermitan Inzerillo family. In the early 1980s, after losing the second mafia war against the Corleonesi of Totorina, the Inzerillo family was forced to flee Sicily. Colli and old Palermo boss Filippo Casamento supported the return of the Inzerillos to Palermo, according to Italian authorities. According to the state police, Frank is also a member of the Sicilian coast. He was the contact for Sicilian mafiosi who traveled to New York to meet him, do business, and update him on Sicilian affairs. "He's our friend and he is everything over there," confided Sicilian mobster Johnny Nicchi to his boss Antonio Ruotolo after a trip in 2003. Nicchi is one of the Sicilian men of honor who went back and forth between Palermo and the US for drug trafficking. In early 2003, Frank Colli and fellow captain Leonard DiMaria began extorting mob taxes from Joseph Valero, the owner of a trucking and contracting company that was helping build a NASCAR speedway on Staten Island. Valero was eventually forced to pay tens of thousands of dollars as tribute to John D'Amico and Gambino acting boss Nicholas Carrazzo. In 2004, to avoid prison time for a cocaine conviction, Valero began working with federal authorities as an informant. Valero's undercover work led to a massive indictment 4 years later. On February 8, 2008, Colli and 61 other New York Mafia associates were arrested and charged with federal racketeering charges as part of Operation Old Bridge. Old Bridge terminated the drug trafficking between the Sicilian Mafia and the Gambino family. Prosecutors claimed that Frank Colli acted as the Gambino ambassador to the Sicilian mobsters and as a liaison between John D'Amico and the Sicilian connections to the Inzerillo family. Colli was charged with racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy, along with D'Amico and Leonard Di Maria. On June 4, 2008, Colli pleaded guilty to conspiring to extort money from Valero. Colli was incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. On April 6, 2009, he was released from prison. Around 2009, Colli's uncle John Gambino was elevated to the family's ruling panel, according to court papers filed in Brooklyn Federal Court. The U.S. Justice Department demanded that Colli avoid all contact with Gambino crime family, except for weddings or holiday celebrations approved in advance by Colli's probation officer. Per record released under Freedom of Information Act, Colli was referred by Customs and Border Protection for secondary screening at George Bush Intercontinental Houston Airport upon return to the United States in 2011. He had arrived on a flight from Honduras. In October 2012, Colli was identified by New York crime reporter Jerry Capeci as the new underboss of the Gambino crime family. Capeci has previously identified Domenico Cefalu, a member of the same Sicilian faction as Colli, as the current boss of the group. Though his status remains unclear, the promotion of both men follows a period in which John Gambino was a street boss within the family, showing that the Sicilian group has remained dominant in recent years with leaders from multiple generations filling top positions in the organization. In July 2013, it was reported that Frank Colli turned down the position of boss of the family. According to law enforcement and various mob sources including Gangland reporter Jerry Capeci, Colli was named the new acting boss of the Gambino family, replacing former acting boss Domenico Cefalu in 2015. Frank Colli died on March 13, 2019, at the age of 53 at Staten Island University Hospital after being shot in front of his home on Hilltop Terrace in the Tot Hill area at about 9:20 p.m. This was the first murder of a New York crime boss since the 1985 assassination of Paul Castellano. Surveillance video showed a pickup truck striking Colli's parked Cadillac, a subsequent confrontation between the driver and Colli, and then the shooting. Colli had tried to evade the killer by using his vehicle as a shield. He was hit 10 times with bullets from a 9mm handgun. On March 16, a 24-year-old suspect Anthony Camello was arrested in Brick, New Jersey, by the New York Police Department and U.S. Marshals. He faced murder charges on Staten Island. On April 3, Camello was indicted and was being held in protective custody at an undisclosed New York City correctional facility. Camello pleaded not guilty on May 10, 2019. Camello has given conflicting stories regarding his motives for killing Colli, ranging from a thwarted romantic interest in a relative of Colli's to conspiracy theories about the so-called deep state. On June 3, 2020, Camello was pronounced mentally unfit to stand trial and sent for further treatment. The aftermath of Frank Colli's death was captured in contemporary physical and wiretap surveillance of other Gambino crime family members. Federal prosecutors allege that Gambino captains Andrew Campos and soldier Vincent Fiore arrived in a home on Staten Island shortly after the death of Frank Colli. Fiore was specifically captured on wiretaps discussing the outcome of Colli's death, including how his stature would rise in the family alongside Campos. As a Zip Sicilian member of U.S. with blood and business ties to the old world, Colli's death caused decks to be reshuffled globally. A joint operation of U.S. and Italian law enforcement, Operation New Connection, resulted in raids of properties in the U.S., including Philadelphia, New Jersey and Staten Island, as well as 15 individuals arrested in Sicily. Those arrested included Thomas Gambino, the U.S.-born son of Giuseppe Joe Gambino, deported Gambino crime family member Rosario Gambino, along with the Sicily mobsters Tommaso Inzerillo and Francesco Inzerillo. Audio and video surveillance released by police included recordings of meetings where the division of Colli's rackets were discussed. The far-ranging operation included surveillance in the Dominican Republic, where Colli is reputed to have had substantial holdings. If you haven't already, please take a second to subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to click on the notification bell so you'll be up to date on all videos released from the Everything Network.